Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at NDN TV Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button and be the first to get notifications.
The controversy trailing the suspension of minimum wage for workers in Delta State is far from over, as professionals in the Niger Delta take the state government to task. In their reaction, the concerned professionals wonder why Delta State, which has consistently received the lion's share of monthly federal allocation, can no longer afford to pay the 30,000 minimum wage to workers. Correspondent Tekena Mofori tells us more.
The recent suspension of minimum wage payment to workers in Delta State with effect from July this year followed series of meetings between the Delta State government and organized labor. According to the state government, it was a painful decision occasioned by dwindling revenues following drastic cuts in crude oil production in the international markets. During the negotiations, 3 conditions were given to labor leaders. The first condition was that cooperative and other deductions would not be remitted for the next 6 months to meet payment of net salary. The second option was that workers on grade levels 1 to 6 would receive the 30,000 minimum wage, while those on levels 7 to 17 were to revert to the old wage regime. And the last condition was retrenchment of workers to enable the government meet its wage bill. After considering all the conditions, labor leaders in Delta State chose the second option.
When we were approached to make some sacrifice to see that the state move forward, we had behind our minds the fact that the state government had always cooperated with us when it came to the issue of workers' welfare. And as he said, if one good turn deserves another.
In its reaction, the opposition All Progressives Congress described the state government decision as unacceptable and called on workers in the state to reject a deliberate attempt to dehumanize them. The ruling People's Democratic Party responded immediately that the All Progressives Congress was seeking cheap publicity with the revised minimum wage bill. It argued that Delta State was among the first states to implement the new 30,000 naira new minimum wage payments until the COVID-19 pandemic took a huge toll on the finances of the state. In addition to paucity of funds occasioned by drastic cuts in oil production, some state officials have submitted that Delta State had been compelled to make expenditures it never contemplated before the outbreak of the coronavirus disease in March this year.
We had a stadium, Stephen Keshi Stadium. It was meant for football and other games. But we are forced into creating an isolation center in the stadium. That's an additional forced cost.
The proposed wage review is a painful and difficult decision, but inevitable in our current circumstances. It is not a repudiation of the payment of the new minimum wage in the state, but a temporary measure that will be lifted as soon as the economy improves.
In line with its new austerity measure, the Delta State government had equally announced that all political office holders would forfeit 25% of their earnings as part of their own sacrifice to enable the state get back on its feet. But how the economic fortunes of Delta State declined to a point where it can no longer sustain the payment of minimum wage has become a source of concern for many. According to a recent report by the National Bureau of Statistics, Delta State, the current highest producer of crude oil in Nigeria, received the biggest allocation of 214.4 billion naira from a total of 2.53 trillion naira disbursed to states from the Federation account between January and November 2019. In the previous financial year, the state also got the lion's share of federal allocations with a total receipt of 215.4 billion naira. In addition to being the highest earner in federal allocations over the years, Delta State has ranked amongst top 10 states with the highest internally generated revenue profile in recent years. Human rights lawyer Frank Tiete said the economic recession attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic by the Delta State government was only an excuse to justify its anti-people's policy.
What kind of environment does the government provide to enable the people to have good and better living standards? That should be the barometer of governance, not a reduction in the standard of living, not using opportunities of COVID-19 to further increase the hardship of the people, whereas such periods of crisis should be opportunities for showing that government is there to help the people.
Frank Tietie took a swipe at labor leaders in Delta State for betraying workers' trust and confidence reposed in them. He called on the organized labor to rise to the occasion and champion the rights of Nigerian workers in Delta State.
If there is a cash crunch problem in Delta State, it can only be as a result of poor management, lack of ideas, and a situation of maladministration. The labor union should reverse itself, should realize that it is not only failing itself, failing its members, but it's failing the whole concept of trade unionism.
For his part, a university lecturer, Austin Sadu, blamed the current financial meltdown in Delta State on mismanagement of state resources. He said the Delta State experience was a typical example of how duplicated political appointment by state chief executives results in overbloated recurrent expenditures that continue to undermine sustainable economic growth and development in the country.
I don't understand. You have senior special assistant project, you have special assistant project, then you have a senior advisor, education matters, you have a commissioner of education. Honestly speaking, we have failed. And unfortunately, many of our people are actually not thinking about what to do to overcome this. It has come to a point where we must come out and demand that the expenditure of government must be published. It's a common patrimony.
The inability of Delta State government to sustain its over 48,000 workers' wage bill of over 7 billion naira monthly is an indication that the rainy days are already upon an otherwise oil-rich state. The Delta State experience is instructive for other states that are almost entirely dependent on crude oil resources for their survival. Perhaps the biggest lesson from the entire scenario is the urgency for a transition from crude oil as mainstay of the Nigerian economy. Sadly, however, the Brace Commission, through which states in the country's South-South geopolitical zone intend to achieve economic diversification, has been comatose for several years. This has prompted most Niger Deltans to raise one salient question: where is the Brace Commission?
Inside the Niger Delta,